sister, Letitia Layson, is writing a book about priestessing on the edge of chaos. We're there, and we know it. We've come into this lifetime because we know it. That we're here as a sisterhood, as priestess, to priestess on the edge of chaos. That is to say, not to step into the chaos and become a total part of it and watch the TV and get all engaged in all the horrors that are being promulgated on a daily basis, but rather to be on the edge of that, recognizing that it exists, and yet maintaining this place of calm, the saturation of presence, recognizing the opportunity that we have in every moment to priestess there, out of stillness, out of this place of deep, deep listening in every moment. I need to go here now. I need to do this. I must move this way. Knowing that because we're moving from a place of stillness, receptivity, and silence, in the womb of silence. We're coming from that place rather than the freneticness, that's going on in the world. And that is what we're being called now to. Absolutely. And to do that as a unified field, truly as priestesses together in a sisterhood, is a dream completely realized for me. When I was your age, Charlotte, I dreamed of this, that there would be a sisterhood that would recohere in my lifetime to serve at this very pivotal time in human history. And I am so grateful for all of you waking up and recognizing the power that you hold as priestesses in this time. Now, we're in it. We've now really come into the body of why we're here. And so to have all the skills and tools that we can possibly bring to bear, that the 13 Moon Mystery School and the 13 Moon Oracle represent from her, not me, I was only a humble scribe, from her to give a design of how we can work right now on the edge of chaos and be of the greatest service. That's what we're doing here. And I'm very, very grateful that you're here on this call, because the waves that go out alchemically from these calls, even though they appear to be happening from the point of view of ego mind, as we're in emptiness, those ripples are going out and affecting the whole human condition. So our job as priestesses is to remain empty. If thoughts come, no judgment, release them, come back to the center, release them, come back to the center. No judgment of self. But knowing that if we're to do the greatest alchemical work, we are needing to be empty in order to do that. Because our greatest, whatever we're learning today in regards to this one particular aspect of this work, is minimal compared to what we're doing here as a sisterhood together in emptiness. So I ask you to truly listen from the viscera today, to what's occurring here. Listen from the viscera so that the waves that go out are coming from clarity and coming from inner knowing. And if you're on the same page as that, then I just ask you to bow to the center. I am here now.
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 By that we mean the great I am, not the small I am, not the personality, the I am that I am. That's who we bring here. When we say that, that's who we're engaging to be with here. And for this moment, while I function my nose and all my incredible feelings and depth of feelings right now, I want to turn over to our beloved Amma, our director, to express very slowly and clearly any technological pieces so that we can stay in this deep state of communion without technological difficulties.
Welcome, everyone. I invite you throughout the call to mute yourself. If you're via the computer, you can do that to the left of your screen. You hover your cursor over and a toolbar will appear. You can easily mute the microphone and unmute it when you want to speak. If you're on the phone, you can do that as well by pressing *6 to mute, *6 to unmute. This will help us all be able to hear and not have background noise get in the way. And that's really the most important thing. If Ariel invites us to raise your hand through this, you'll find that on the participant toolbar icon that you can click, and you should see a raise hand option. That's only if Ariel invites us to use that, and that's still in the promise of what is yet to come. Ariel, back to you.
I want you to feel free during this time together to stay in this deep resonance, but also to allow questions to arise from your belly, from your heart, and they arise from thought, let them go. That's not what is being looked at here. But if a soul question arises from your belly or heart, from emptiness, from the womb of silence, feel free to bring it, to raise your hand, whatever Amma just said, to be able to bring it to us as a totality, because it will serve the whole. If it's arising and coming up rather than down, then please share it during this call. I'm going to start where I would start regardless of what the subject matter was. Everything in the 13 Moon Mystery School is predicated on empty presence. Our direct connection to Source is sourced simply and wholly through empty presence. We are reeds of consciousness, and as we are empty, we may be played, we may be moved. And so how do we become empty and present? Each of you has your own techniques for doing that. In our mystery school, we work with looking at another pair of eyes and letting our eyes become conduits of the soul, and that it weave back and forth. And so if in this moment you want to look at the pair of eyes of someone else, one of the other sisters, and entrain with their eyes and look deeply into their eyes, to use the practice of empty presence. And if not, you're not able to do that because you're on a phone, you can do that by looking at a candle flame. Very easy to begin to entrain if you just really engage fully and emptily with a candle flame or with a flower. Or you can even use, of course, the mirror to look into your own eyes at another point in time. Here it would be a little awkward, but that's another means to emptying out, so that that conduit of energy coming from the earth and coming from the solar logos and coming from our hearts become in full alignment. The other is the concept of resonance. There are three things that you really can't move past without really having a deep understanding of. That's empty presence, resonance, and archetypal energy and how it operates. So secondly, resonance is very easy to understand. It has to do with being a tuning fork, which we are. And one tuning fork, when it's struck, another tuning fork will begin to vibrate next to it, even if it has not been struck. That is the nature of resonance. And so as we are struck with vibrational frequency here, which is what is going on beyond what the appearance of the words coming out of my mouth are, then each one of us becomes struck the same way as a bell, that we're a total bell, and each of us is being struck by each of the others in this deep sense of resonance. And so we walk away feeling different vibrationally. So using, as I'm speaking, using the eyes of someone to empty with, doesn't matter. Really moving into that sense of resonance with each other, letting yourselves energetically entrain with each other so that your fields become one. And then that does it for the whole, due to the nature of resonance, whether you're on a phone or able to see or whatever. Due to the nature of resonance, we become one singing bowl that's vibrating together. Then the third piece is understanding the nature of archetypal energy. That the nature of it is to bring us into coherence, that archetypal energy by its very nature brings coherence into the field. And coherence is the difference between a flashlight and a laser beam. And of course, we want to be working with the power of a laser beam. So in order for us to do that, we need to understand that if archetypal energy begins to flow through, which it oftentimes does, regardless of the subject matter that we're dealing with, you may feel tingles in your hands, or your third eye, or your head, in your belly, your womb, in your yoni. You may feel energetic impulses, either electrical or heat or sound or light pulses. But do not be in any way watching or waiting for those things. They will happen as archetypal energy starts having an empty conduit that it can move through. As you empty yourself of thought, as you empty yourself of emotion, then that is a natural occurrence as a gift of grace from our mother. There's no trying to entertain archetypal energy. There's only emptying. And as you empty, you may begin to experience some of these sensations. If you do, bless. If you don't judge yourself. It takes time to learn what it feels like to be in empty presence, not as a concept, but as a living reality. And so I ask you now to really allow your whole somatic being to resonate. Just resonate. In your body, in your belly, your whole being to resonate with the possibility of archetypal interface today. For that is the nature of what the moon board is in spades. It's giving you an opportunity to interface at a very, very deep level with archetypal energy. I use the moon board for divinations when I really need collective awareness. When I'm sitting with someone in ceremony and initiatory work, when we're trying to get a really large overview, I will use the moon board. And it is embedded, as everything in this work is, totally embedded vibrationally with information. And so it's important that you feel, as you begin to open the board, that you feel the blessing of what its intention is, that it is a holographic tool. It may look like a flat surface that you're looking at, but believe me, it is a living hologram. And by the end of this call, I'll show you the highest possible resonant use of this, which will demonstrate its holographic nature. But we're going to work backwards here to start with the most simple way of looking at it as a flat, surfaced divination tool. But in its full bloom, it is a holographic tool. So where we would start with this, I'm going to ask you, Carly and Charlotte, to please hold still because my consciousness can't maintain its clear focus unless you do that. Okay, would you help me out with that? Thank you. And so we have the nature of resonance and the nature of how we can hold a resonant field. Stray movement, stray thoughts, stray emotions start to create oscillations on the field. No judgment, that's just a reality with resonance. So we're learning about that and we're holding that in that way. So the moon board, to begin with, besides the overview that I just gave you in terms of its use and when you might want to use it, starts with a card. You can, in any workings with this tool of the total 13 Moon Oracle, begin with one card because there's so much information embedded in one card frequency-wise as to do a whole reading just from that one card because it's all holographic. It's only an opening to the larger hologram. So when you're engaging with a whole moon board that's going to have a number of those holographic interfaces, you're asking for a maximum kind of complexity. So we're going to simplify today. If we were in Delphi, we would be using this as a divination board for collective, when people came together to collectively divine for the whole community, that they would use a tool like this. So let's start with the simple. First of all, I will ask you, do you know what moon phase we are sitting in today? Is anyone aware of what phase of the moon we sit in? Just speak it out loud. Unless you're all on mute.
Waiting. Initiator.
What phase of waning?
Initiator.
Almost. We are in the Queen of Death, in the cycle of the moons. It's the last waning crescent. And it's very telling to me that most of us are, no judgment meant, but are really not paying attention in that close way to what phase the moon she is in this moment. And so the moon board gives us a way, at a very simple level, it gives us a way to track where the moon is in any given moment. So you can take one of your tokens and use it as something that goes around the outside. You start always in the Great Mother, in emptiness, in surrender, in the dark of the moon when there is no moon in sight. So if you want to use it in that very simple way, you just take the token and move it day by day. Each phase is about 2 to 3 days. In the Goddess, everything is about subtle change and flow. There is no right or wrong. There's no absolute, this is the day, this is this, this is that. It's always moving, always moving. So you'll be about in the right place when you put your tokens down every 2 to 3 days and you move it around the entire board. That way, even if you track it for one moon, you will develop a relationship with the different phases of the moon that each have vastly different vibrational gifts and capabilities that will be offered to you as you tune into them. Is there someone who has done that process that could speak to that, that could say, this is what happened for me doing that? I'd love to hear from somebody who's had that experience.
I'm happy to speak to that.
Thank you.
And it by the way, it is the gibbous waning moon, Ariel, right now. We're just between the primal and the initiator.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
See how good I am. You know, in looking at it visually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it's the Queen of Death. Go ahead.
So I've done this, and what I receive something each time. And primarily it's about what energy I feel in my body and primarily in my womb during the different phases of the moon. Actually, not only in my womb, sometimes Creator Destroyer is the back of my head. And so just noticing and taking, every couple of days to sit with the moon, whether I can see it or not, just knowing what phase it's in, and simply going into empty presence and witnessing what occurs in my body and how my physical body responds to these different phases. And it's been fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Because if the moon can pull the tides on Earth, she can surely pull the waters in your womb and the waters of our bodies. So if we subtly attune to the subtlety of what Mother is giving us in each phase, each of those 13 different phases, then we can learn how she impacts us physically, how she impacts us. This is subtle. Mostly people are not paying attention at these levels of subtlety, but this moon board is calling you, Mother is calling you to pay attention to the moon and how she affects you. Now, obviously, it's a creational wheel as well. It is a system of working with the phases of the moon to bring manifestation into form, which when we put up the moon mat onto the screen thingy, then I can show you moving around the whole thing, but I wanted to do an overview first. That getting in touch with the moon phases is the first level of working with this work. Then it has a ring that has to do with the tools that each of the phases are aligned with and how they play out with human beings in terms of how the tool entrains your consciousness to be more. In other words, you becoming the staff, you becoming the chalice, you becoming the sword, that you're entraining your consciousness with the symbol of the tool that's associated with that moon phase, assists you in embodying the qualities of that particular tool. And then there is the level of, well, maybe we better put the picture up. It'll be easier to look at. What do you think, Amma? Okay, let's try doing that and see if it'll be easier to describe. And then I will leave time at the end, I know, for you to have questions. So if there's something that comes, like I said, questions arising, please do it whenever you feel. Thank you. There she is. Okay, so now I shall don my sparkly glasses and we'll track going around. Oh, is that a little finger that moves? Can I do this? Can you see that? Pointing at things?
That would be me. So direct me where you want me to move it, and I'm happy to comply.
Point to I surrender, I receive, then, and we'll just go around the moon wheel.
Go.
There we go. So we always start in the dark of the moon, and that's hard to know because you don't see a moon up in the sky. You just think maybe she's over the mountain or whatever. You have to be really attuned to feel this, the subtlety of the dark of the moon. In ancient times, this was when most women bled together, when they had their moon time in the red tent in this dark of the moon in the darkness. And we all now in modern times obviously have uncalibrated to that level of subtlety. And then that first thing, each of the qualities of these various phases of the moon are quintessentialized by the two words at the bottom. And in her, it's I surrender, I receive. In the Great Mother, it is I surrender, I receive. And it is about absolutely breathing out. And that's why it was the moon time to go in and be fed temple food and tea and, just empty and be in your moon time. And then if you're using it as a manifestational wheel, that is the moment of that, the empty womb. It's just emptiness. And then the next one, the next phase is I recognize I seed in the goddess of compassion. And that's when you recognize what it is in your life that is calling to be seeded, that's calling to be embraced or intended, or whatever way you're utilizing this. I recognize I seed. And so when the moon's just barely beginning to make a tiny, tiny crescent, that's the goddess of compassion moon. And then moving into the priestess moon, where it's a fuller crescent, I amplify in stillness is her mantra. And so she is all about just being an empty chalice and amplifying whatever it is that you've recognized and seeded in that expansive stillness. And then you're moving into the creator, into the first quarter of the waxing moon, which is the creator destroyer. And that is I focus, I create. And so you focus on your seed, you create on the seed that you're really intending to manifest in this moon. Or if you're looking at this as a hologram of a whole year, then this would be the fourth moon of the year. If you look at the moon board as a whole hologram fractal of a year instead of a moon, then you would look at it that way. And then the next phase is I intend, I empower. And that is in the Lady of Communion, that has to do with bringing the clarity of your absolute intention to create in this moon and empowering it in some way. That can be with whatever you're doing with it creatively. You'll explore that. I don't want to get into too much depth because we want to leave time for questions. And then the next one is the muse, and that's I play, I inspire. So you take your intention and you play with it, and you find inspiration for it, and you build it from that point of view, from the inspired point of view of letting it go, not having it be so tightly held, but playing with it. And then we come around to the goddess of love, in which the full moon says, I feel, I respond, I beautify. So in the full moon is the time where most people want to have parties. It's the outward, extroverted, I feel, it's so beautiful, let's respond, that kind of a feeling. And why, if you want to have outward events, and why you're finding now you have so many invitations on full moons, because women are starting to tune into the fact that that's when the mother is supporting us in that outward flow of energy. And so then we begin to move into the waning phase. And by the way, the full moon only lasts for about 3 minutes. And then it's moving either one way or the other. It's moving in energy, and that's just the subtle nature of the goddess. So we're moving into the waning phase, and that's and the primal goddess in I fuel, I consume. And so we look at our intention through the lens of what needs to be fueled here and what needs to be consumed, what's no longer useful, what is not working here, and let's fuel what is. And so looking at it from an intentional point of view, that's what you would be looking at in that moon. And then you take it into the next level of waning moon, which is the initiator. I align, I challenge, I clarify. So we take out the sword of absolute clarity and we say, okay, let's look at this from the highest possible alignment. Does this serve all beings? Does my idea, does my intention serve the highest possible overview for all beings? That's the level the initiator's looking at your intention and what needs to be looked at with that level of hawk-like clarity. And then we move into the phase where it's again the quarter moon in the waning side. And that's the wise woman that says, all right, now we take the intention and we simplify it and simply resonate it. So you're sitting with the idea of it, you've created something maybe and you've made it into a form of some sort. And now it's time to just simply be with the creation, whatever it is, in the way of resonating its intention. And that naturally moves into the Weaver Dreamer, who says, I dream, I connect. So you take the intention and dream it into the collective. You start alchemically doing the work before the product you have or the idea you have ever makes it into the world of form. You have now put it into the collective light loom of this earth. You deliberately and ceremonially, if you wish to, which is very empowering to your intention, put it into the collective mind field of earth, into the weave of the light loom of earth, and dreamed it into being by connecting all the pieces. That would be a great time for networking, if you want to call it that, weaving your reality, taking the intention into a circle of women you're working with and connecting it outside of your own connections inwardly. And finally, we have the Queen of Death, which is I release and I trust. And that's that finally little, that's what I thought I was seeing, because when I looked at the moon, I looked at that tiny waning moon, I thought, has to be the Queen of Death. So there we are with my perceptual field. The final one, obviously, is the touching of the connection between I trust, I surrender, which you cannot have surrender without trust. And you cannot have trust without surrender. It's like those two are one thing. And so they start and end the wheel in trust and surrender between those two archetypal faces. And then the final 13th moon is in the very center. It's called the Moon of Alchemistica, and it is basically the 13th moon. When the solar priesthood took the lunar calendar that has 13 moons of about 28 days and scattered it around the whole solar calendar of 12 moons, it set up the whole field for scientific materialism to happen for what we now are living with. From that simple move of taking us out of calibrated time of lunar time, it set everything into motion to what we're looking at. So as we begin to retune in to this lunar 13 moon cycle, and if you have a lunar calendar and want to follow it, that's very valuable. But even if you're just following the phases of the moon, each moon, you're beginning to recalibrate with natural time, recalibrate with the way that nature calibrates. And you can't say time because nature is timelessness, but in the field of what we have to work with, it's the moon, that's the calibrator that most primitive people would mark on a stick, the different phases of the moon. They began to tune into time based on the moon. So that's the real quickie course on that. And then coming into the next level are the tools that are associated with each archetype. And in the mother, it's the cauldron. And in the goddess of compassion, it's mudra, mantra, and yantra. That structure is what, and you see the word structure above it and empty above these. It describes the nature of the tool in one word in a very quintessential version. I mean, you could study mudra, mantra, and yantra, which is sacred movement, sacred geometry, for your whole life and never get the whole thing, but that's structure is the overview word there. Then we have the chalice and the priestess. And again, remembering that these aren't just about the tools themselves and understanding the nature of those tools. It's about you as that tool. You as the cauldron, you as mudra, mantra, yantra, you as the chalice, you as the crystal skull. The crystal skull represents your ability to be crystalline clear, that your focus and your creations are coming from absolute clarity in your focus. So moving from the creator destroyer, then we move into the tool of the light shield, which is a more subtle tool that requires more explanation. But of course you have your handy dandy 13 moon oracles to look at those things and deepen with them. But basically the light shield is an expression not of protection, as shield usually means, but actually as celebration of who you are as an archetypal mythic being. So, and embodying that. And so next would be the muse, and that's the wand, which has forever been associated with creativity and creation. So that tool becoming that wand. And then we have in the goddess of love, we have the cornucopia, which is fecundance and abundance and all the things that make life so, it's a feeling based tool that allows us to use the senses as our tool. Our senses are touch, taste, smell, all of the senses, extrasensory and sensory, but utilizing all the senses as a tool. That these are multidimensional receptors. Our hands, our crowns are all multi-dimensional receptors, and that's what that tool is about. And then going to the primal goddess, the tool is lightning, and that's catalytic. The primal goddess is about catalyzing any stuck energy. She is like, oh, let's shake it up here. So her tool is naturally the drum and the rattle. And then moving into the initiator, the tool is the sword, which is obviously about truth and clarity and cutting through the illusion of the way we hold reality, the way we hold ourselves back from expressing our truth so we won't hurt someone's feelings, all those kinds of things, cutting through that. And then we move into the wise woman, which her tool is the staff, holding the staff that touches both the earth and is open to the divine at the top, so that when we're walking with our actualized wisdom in the world, not a body of knowledge, but actualized wisdom, we are holding the staff of our power in the way it's really meant to be held, with gentleness, with compassion, with awareness, with presence, all the things that a wise old woman represents. And that's how we embody that staff. And of course, our spine is that staff in embodiment. And then we move into the weaver. And of course, hers is the light loom or the weaving loom, but the loom is her tool to work with, to weave new realities in her beautiful tapestries that she creates. And in the Queen of Death, it's the death shroud. And that is that covering, that going deeply, deeply, deeply inside when we're in bereavement, in grief, when we're in depression, when we're in betrayal issues, when we're in very, very dark places. This is a place to go and release, absolutely release. And so not anything to be afraid of. The Queen of Death is one of my absolute favorite archetypal energies. She is so gentle, so embracing, so loving. And as you really begin to feel into all these archetypes, they each have different flavors that are so go-to when you need that. Woo! I guess the Queen of Death wanted to be voiced a little louder there. And then we move into this ring of the sacred geometries, which is the most arcane or difficult for people to comprehend the absolute vast power of. Sacred geometries on the ring of each of these, you can look at them, and you've probably seen many of them before in just in daily life, a triangle or a five-pointed star or a spiral. All of those geometries represent vast fields of information. Geometries are basically subtle luminosities and sound upon which all forms emanate. They emanate from these. They're literally the building blocks of creation. And so when you're tuning into sacred geometries, you're tuning into the building blocks of creation. And they are like walkie-talkies. If you meditate with those geometries and you just sit simply and let them transmit to you what it is that they want to give you that day, because they're each cosmic libraries full of information, if you're just willing to empty out and sit with the geometry, looking at it on the card or looking at it on the board, but not just looking at it, communing with it, being with it, and allowing that transmission base to happen in emptiness, then you'll be impulsed with amazing guidance and information vibrationally. And each one of them is unique. Each one of them has a very unique kind of vibrational information base. So you can work with those, but the ultimate finality of working with geometries is to learn to recognize them really fully in communion, in the transmitting between you, and then to close your eyes and to spin them in your third eye, to transmit it, to see it, to be able to see it and visualize it, absolutely see it clearly, as if you had your eyes open and were looking at it, and spinning that energetic in your third eye. And that opens up an entirely different dimensional perception when you're able to do that and you utilize that. Is there anybody who has used that level of working with the geometries that wants to speak about a personal experience with that? I forgot to do that on the tools, but we'll go back. I'm nonlinear. Anyone wanting to speak to the geometries and your interface with the geometries?
Ariel.
That's the last time I looked.
It's Cheryl here. I haven't used it in my third eye, but I've had an experience of the anti-Karana, which is an ancient symbol where it was placed under a couch and I lay on top of the couch and I just had an immediate out-of-body experience where I just shot right up to the universe and I was just floating around the cosmos at high speeds, but in it, you know, it was an okay way. So I was flying around seeing all these amazing planets, stars. And then after a while, because it was so rapid, it made me feel quite ill. And then I thought, oh, it's time to come back. And I then dropped back down into my body. But it was just so powerful. That was probably my first experience of sacred geometry.
Oh, well, that was a great place to start. That is not atypical, beloveds, of the power of geometry, seriously, and to have out-of-body experiences with them, and not to hold yourself hostage by saying, if I don't have that, I haven't experienced anything, because it's a process of evolution. And at first you may only get electrical tingles, or you may get an image that impulses you to create something. There's not an up or down of valuing. An out-of-body experience is no better than a direct experience of a divine vibrational interface. Let's get realistic. There's no comparison to anything in the goddess. It's not about that. There's nothing that's better or worse than. It's your direct experience that matters. And so when someone else has an experience that you say, oh, I wish I could do that. Please don't do that. Everyone's spiritual experience is exactly what it needs to be. And we really hold down our frequency by comparing our experience to someone else's. So please know that each of your unique interfaces with all of these symbols will be different and equally valid and valuable. So the tools are the same thing. I would just not take time with that right now, but just to say to you that you will have unique experiences from the archetype that's holding that tool. In other words, the Great Mother will instruct you around the cauldron, will vibrationally offer from that. And finally, we have the realm of Alchemistica in the very center of the wheel. And that is the alchemical face. And that is, I am union, I am freedom, I am grace. Those are her 3 words. And it is about that place that is beyond time, that is beyond space. So it's the realm of Alchemistica. So now we're going to try to use the wisdom of the tokens and how we would use these tokens on this board. If you take out your first token of the moon token, and if you have your board out, just be paying attention to what this moon token represents, which is the quality of consciousness that is trying to be integrated or harvested at this time in your life, at this moment. So that's what it stands for. In other words, it's like the field of awareness, the general field of quality of consciousness that you're engaging with in this reading. So the moon token is about qualities of consciousness. So if you were to throw your token onto the board, if those of you who have them out, now I can't do that on my screen here, but I can do it over here. Then just randomly throw it with absolutely no intention toward anything. I close your eyes is even better. And if it rolls off the board, let it roll off the board and do it again. I mean, don't make it mean something. Just pick up the token and let it land somewhere, okay? Do that. And then the second token is the triple spiral, and it represents the growth ring that you're engaged with. In other words, it even shows it in the token. You can remember it really easily because it looks like a tree's growth rings that go out concentrically. And so it's asking, what it's wanting to clarify and bring illumination to is, what is the growth ring that I'm engaged with right now? If I were a tree and the growth ring that I'm demonstrating right now in my life, what is it that is the growth ring that I'm engaged with right now? So taking your triple spiral token with that awareness and throwing it on the board. Again, without concern if it rolls off, pick it up, let it go again. And finally, the third token is the labyrinth token. And as with all labyrinths, the light at the center of the labyrinth is what we're moving toward. And so it represents the unconscious, the shadow, the initiatory process you're engaged with right now, that's unconscious and wanting to be brought into the light of the center of the labyrinth. So when you look at this, you'll remember that it represents the unconscious material that is the constant circumambulating around and around and around to reach the center of the labyrinth and bring to light any unconscious material that you are not aware of right now that needs to be paid attention to. So go ahead and throw that for whatever rite of passage, whatever initiatory gate you're at right now in the shadow. Okay. Now, there are two things you're going to have to be aware of in order to move forward with this. If a token fell in between two archetypes, you can either read both, which would be more complicated, or move it on to one or the other without, thought. Just bring it into focus in one or the other. For today, that would simplify things. If it's on a line, then you can move it one way or the other so that it's in something specific. Or if you want to read both, you're welcome to do that. It just makes more complexity. And then if you're really doing a full out reading, you would choose one card for each of the triple spirals on the edges. You would, some people divide them up into frequency cards, tool cards, and archetype cards, and choose one of each of those and put them in the corner in these triple spirals, put those cards there. And then the final one is like a wild card, and it just describes it in the book, but just choosing a card to go there. And then you have a full oracular reading. This is a nighttime's worth of work. This is not a quickie situation. This is really when you're willing to go into an extremely expanded state and work with these things. And the way you can do that is either direct information, and that is you and the archetype downloading with you images, colors, sounds that are in response to your question. If you've framed a question as you've gone into this, which most people do, then it will be responding to that question directly through somatic cues, through any of the sensory bases, through auditory, hearing, sounds, color, image, whatever means that they can get through, whatever channel the archetype can get through to work with you on that. Or if you're just beginning with this, you'll open your 13 Moon Oracle to the archetype that it fell on. And you'll look through the qualities page, the elements and qualities page, until a word jumps off the page. something grabs you, something in your solar plexus says, oh, that is what I'm reading this for. In other words, you're not trying to garner intellectual content. You are trying to read it until the feeling that constellates what it is you're looking, the answer to what you're looking for will be encoded in a feeling. And so when you get a strong feeling, when you're reading through the elements or quality pages of any of these archetypes, or any of these tools, or any of these moon phases, anything here, when you get a strong feeling, you go there and you read that, you meditate with that, you deepen with that. I usually just sit in meditation with whatever the word is that's pinged me and said, this is what you're meant to focus on here to really receive the truth of the answer that you're looking for at a soul level. So that is how you can work with any of these things. When it lands on it, you can read about it until something jumps off the page and says, this is the reason you received this archetype or this tool or whatever, and work with that and deepen with that and meditate with that. Let me see if that's the general overview. Well, then there's the holographic thing at the end, which I promised you I would do. But are there any questions up until now? I mean, real soul questions about, or linear questions if you're confused in any way about how to define the way that you read these. I want to open to that, either level. And I think those of you who can stay a little longer, can you stay longer, Amma? I'd like to stay as long as everyone wants to stay because there's just way too much information here to cover in an hour. So, anyone have questions?
Adele, your hand is raised. And you are unmuted.
Thank you. Hello, Ariel.
Blessed be.
My question, because I've been just sitting with the mat myself recently and wondering, I heard you briefly mention that there is an alignment with the rhythm, with the cycle of the year. And my question was then, would Great Mother fall around the winter solstice and Goddess of Love then at summer?
Yes, that would be one way of holding it. Like I was saying, you know, I could say yes to 3 different answers here because it depends on how you hold it holographically. But yes, that's one very good way of holding it. You know, the darkest time of the year and the lightest time of the year. Yes, great perception. I could look at it harmonically as music. And I could look at the first tone as being the Great Mother, the third tone being the priestess, the fifth tone being, I could look at it as totally as a harmonic wheel, and an out picturing of sound and music. Thank you. Any other questions like that? That's very helpful. And I do want to stay for at least 15 more minutes, Alma. Can we do that?
Yes.
Those that have to go, but I really want to be able to answer these seminal questions. Any others? Maybe you all just totally took it all in and you all got it. You don't have any questions, and that's great.
Cheryl has a question.
Okay.
Hi, did you say there were 5 cards that were put down? I know you said 1 on each of the triple spirals.
4.
4.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any others?
Hi, Ariel. We don't have time for this now. It could perhaps be another call. I would love to have, again, using the mat for creation. I know there's so many nuances of it that there aren't time for now.
Right, right. I would highly recommend that you get a 13 Moon Oracle. It's so spelled out in there. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, I'll go through that again. Thank you.
Yeah, it's on about page 24. It's
okay.
A creational wheel, and it goes into great detail around it. So.
Okay, I'll read that. Thank you.
Okay, that's the reason I was light touching on those, because I knew you would have the book to use it.
Yeah, yeah.
Blessed be. Thank you.
Blessed be.
Anyone else?
Hi, Ariel. It's Carly.
Hi, Carly.
Hi. So you said something about splitting the deck into the different categories, and then you would just choose 3, 1 from each of the categories? Okay. And that's just a different way to do a reading.
Yeah, in other words, you can just draw them randomly and put the 4 cards in the 4 corners, or you can divide the deck into the frequency, tool, and archetype, and put those 3 in 3 of the quarters. And then there's something it talks about in the 13 moon, in the oracle, about the position of the 4th one. I think it's something like, what am I stepping into as my highest mythic self, or something along those lines. It's the 4th position, but everything, it can be whatever you want it to be. Totally. There are no, I cannot say this enough, there are no right or wrong ways to work with this material. None. It is how you utilize it and what your direct connection is to the divine with it, but there's no right or wrong way. So whatever works for you and whatever gives you that high and elevated, expanded awareness, do it.
Yay.
A million ways to do everything. Yeah, that's the mother. She's got it all wired just so that we can do it our way.
Charlotte chose the wise woman.
She is. She is.
Thank you.
Yes, blessed be. Any others? Okay, then I'm going to fill in with the holographic level unless somebody has more questions, and I'm really happy to answer them. So please, if there's any problem with muting or whatever, let Amma know so we can answer the questions that you have this opportunity to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to just sally forth on the holographic, and then we'll come back to any questions.
We do have a question, Grace.
Great.
Yes, hi Ariel. I don't have my board yet, and this is all new to me. I'm with Elaine in her 13 moon program.
Yep.
So it's all new, but it's all extraordinarily deeply familiar in a very interesting way.
Oh, great.
So I'm curious, you mentioned earlier, like, it sounds like there's so many levels to use this. And one that we started out with was just go with where the moon is now.
Yes.
Look there at not only the mantra, I release, I trust, or whatever that might be, or the symbol, and just go there as the moon circles us. And then there's the other way. So it just sounds like, however, my mind can go a little funny when I go, well, which one do I do? But it sounds like there's just many ways to use this.
Oh, totally.
The first one that you described was the first, is one way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
There's so many holographic openings. This is a totally holographic, nonlinear, non-causal system.
Okay.
So anywhere you start is the beginning. Anywhere you start is where you need to start. There's no right way to do it.
Okay.
You know, I just suggested the moon phases because that's the simplest interface.
Yes, maybe it's just the way in too.
Yeah, it's a simple way in, holographically speaking, to the system.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, beloved. Any others? Mama, there's some orange button going on. Do I need to pay attention to that?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Grace, did you have another question?
Okay.
Grace, did you have another question, honey?
Oh, no, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Thank you. I'll unmute myself.
Charlotte just noticed that it could be like a clock too. And I was wondering what would be sort of the noon or midnight position if this were a clock, if you were looking at it.
What would you say to that? See, rather than my answering, I want to train everyone in self-authority. Charlotte, what would you say if that were the case? Where would you?
I think that the Great Mother would be midnight.
Nighttime.
Would be midnight.
Yeah, that's it's a lunar clock in that respect. I'm always waiting for 13 to come up on my clock, Charlotte, just so you know. I'm always there. Yes, any way that you want to look at it, you can play with that and see how aligned it is, because it will show you if it's aligned in truth. You'll feel that it's aligned in truth in your body. And then you'll keep playing with it until it feels that deep kind of alignment in your body. You'll know. Blessed be. Any others?
Hi, Ariel.
Yes.
This is Oshoya. I am just wondering, did you get to talk about the other tokens? My screen was off. I know you talked about the moon token, but how about the other token in the box?
There are 3 tokens.
Yes.
I talked about all of them.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed the other 2.
You'll be able to get the recording and hear that. And if you have a
Oh.
book, it describes it in the book, but it's so difficult to explain. In the book, I had a real hard time putting it into linear terms because it's a nonlinear tool. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Well, I want to do the holographic level, and before we go, so I'd like you all just to entrain to the moon board that you can see on your screen. I would like you all just to be in empty presence with it, the way that you would be if you were looking in someone's eyes. Let it go fuzzy. Let it go out of focus. If you need to cross your eyes once to let it go out of linear focus, let that happen. Just totally allow it to start dissolving. And the mind will want to keep everything in its category and everything in its place. Just continue to ask your mind to surrender and let it go out of focus. Let it go fuzzy. Let it go relaxed vision. And this is how we begin to see through dimensionally, and how our mind wants to keep us safe, and so it doesn't want us to see this. And what it is dimensional veil that we begin to see through dimensionally when we allow ordinary vision to dissolve. We begin to expand in frequency and expand in vibration, and thus we expand in our ability to perceive at much more subtle levels. So just continue to allow that, and you may now be having any kind of interface that is energetic that you can feel in your body. You just may have a perceptual shift or electricity or light, pulsation. Just notice, and if you don't have those things, that's okay. This is a training that takes a long time to really be able to get the mind to cooperate, like a small child to cooperate with you in letting go of its ordinary coordinates and consciousness. Now, if you blink your eyes a little bit, you can get it to blink on and off for a minute, just like it's blinking off. That will help to dissolve it too. And then coming back into dissolved focus. And then when you really have this, and this will take some time for some of you, especially those of you who have strong minds, it will be more difficult because they don't want to capitulate the controls to the divine self. They want to keep you safe, and so they want you safe. No, you have to see it this way. This is the way it is. Just keep asking the mind to relax, that it's okay. And as you do that, and as that becomes possible, you'll either start seeing a vortex going inwardly, like water going down a tub drain, or you'll see the whole board raising to where you see different levels, so that they're not flat rings anymore, that the smallest one is the highest part of the temple, which this is. And you'll see that, and you'll see it either going convex or concave. Either it will come out at you, so that it's the temple with the top round piece being the top dome of the temple, or a vortex going spiraling inward. There are 2 spirals that basically create reality as we know it, the interface of 2 spirals of creation, electro and magnetic. And their interface creates our reality. And so there is a convex and a concave. an electro and a magnetic field that you're tapping into. And so in that place of awareness, of when you can diffuse your awareness enough that you can begin to see the male, which is going outward, spiral, and the female, which is everything being pulled to the center, the magnetic spiral. Then you can begin to interface with this system as a completely holographic system where information comes in through direct interface with the whole rather than the parts. As I told you, this is a mystery, and it's nothing that you can understand with your mind. It is not meant to be. But as you are as you work with it and you have a direct experience of this interface of electro and magnetic, of the vortexes of creation, you begin to be open to a level of interface dimensionally that the Divine Mother wants you to have to get direct access to whatever you want to call it, the Akashic records, the mainframe computer of reality, whatever you want to call that, but a direct interface with Divine Source and the information that you're looking for from that Divine Source. So is anyone having a direct experience of what the words are that I am saying? And can you respond from the place of that awareness?
Yeah. My experience is of it going back and forth, going down, and then going up back towards me. And I want to just totally surrender myself into the center of it, into the symbol in the center.
If that's the way you're being impulsed, do it. Whatever your impulse is, this could be where you're pulled through the center of the vortex into the void.
Yeah, it feels like it's the portal.
Exactly. Alka Mystica is a portal. But you have to have a direct experience of that for that to be so.
Yeah.
It's not an intellectual concern.
So, and at first I even heard sounds as I was getting close to it.
Well, trust me, go with that. You'll start to hear a whooshing sound that sounds like moving very fast in a wind tunnel. So you're entering into that portal as we speak. These are the higher harmonics of the mystery that no one can talk to you about. You have a direct experience. So I encourage you to use your moon mat in this way and to go into that vortex and to get back to us about your experience. I'd love to hear from you on an email what happened. Would you do that? Thank you. Anyone else have a direct experience here with the holographic nature of this tool?
This is Elizabeth. I have a pretty intense astigmatism, and the first thing I noticed as I entrained on the moon map was that the circle separated and became a vesica Pisces, which felt very telling.
Yes.
And as with Sarah, at first it was a vortex with going deep in, and then it kind of came out, and then some of the layers were going down, like the tools layer went down into the vortex, and the sacred geometry layer came up towards me, and the central alchemical layer came up towards me. But one of the most intense things was that it was like I was being sucked in so deeply, like I had to go to sleep. In fact, my muscles kind of jerked a couple times, like when you're sort of fighting against sleep. This was a really powerful experience.
Yes, and you see, you cannot get that through words.
No.
You have a direct experience, and everything in the 13 Moon Mystery School is about direct experience. Until you've had a direct experience, you have not had the mystery.
Exactly.
So you could be playing with this for years, just using it as a tool to access divinations and so forth, and not have this experience of the mystery. But because it was designed through me, not by me, by Mother, she's made it very clear to me in using it, I didn't even see this to begin with. I had no idea. And then I began sitting and in training with it the way you are. And I went, holy Mother of God, this thing is moving me into a vortex. And I was in such shock and awe. You know, so I have to, you know, whenever I'm teaching this as a mystery teaching, to bring you to the possibility of this, because it could take you years to discover this. And you would if you kept in empty presence and kept asking for direct experiences of the mystery. You would. But this is a short form of our doing this today, as an offering to say, really start looking at this as a hologram, as a living, breathing sphere hologram, rather than a flat board. And you'll start having amazing experiences. It's just a totally other level of interface.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I'll see you on Friday.
Friday. I don't know who I am, but I guess you will. Okay. So, unless there are any other burning questions right now, that is the holographic level. And I'll just give one moment of silence until we see that there aren't any other questions that are really pressing anymore.
I have a question, but I have a perception I'd like to share. Can you hear me?
Receive you.
As I peer into the map, it feels like the spikes, the areas for each one of the archetypes is like a slide that's sliding down into the center.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
And there's a brightness behind the symbol of the Alchemistica, and sort of glowing and pulsing.
Yes, it is.
And the sacred geometry symbols feel like they're on columns that are coming toward me. And the symbol in the center, it's almost like stamping my soul. It feels like a stamp, like a brand, you know, like a stamp. It's like
fascinating perception. Thank you so much for that. And totally true. From my point of view in the hologram, it's totally true. Because it can either be the dark vortex that you go into, or the bright sun of consciousness of the solar, the radiance that you just described. And certainly that symbol of the triquetra of the maiden, the mother, the crone, and divine feminine consciousness, we want emblazoned in our consciousness. So thank you for that perception. Beautiful. I'll get this at such a deep level, because I had really questioned Mother this morning in meditation as to whether it was wisdom to even share this level. Just send, you know, to just try and cover the linear was miraculous, but to go into this level seems like way too much. So I'm really glad that we did. For those of you who are ready to receive it at this level as a hologram, I'm really grateful. There was something else that wafted in just then. Let me see if I can try and regather it when you were speaking. Oh, yes, thank you. Mother just re-impulsed me. Also, if you look across the board, if you look, for example, at the, oh God, I'm such an expanded state. Just take any two pairs, like take the Queen of Death, for example, and look, and the pie-shaped piece that's directly opposite is the Muse. You see what I'm saying? If you start with the Queen of Death and you go across the board, directly across the board, the pie shape, yeah, can you show them what I'm talking about there? And the Queen of Death going directly across is the Muse. I mean, they could not be more antithetically opposite. And so each of these is embedded that way too, that if you get, say, the goddess of compassion in the triangle that's pointing upward, and its opposite is the triangle pointing downward in the primal goddess. So the frequencies that you get as an archetype and those that are directly opposite have information for you as well, if you're looking at this as a total hologram. So thank you for bringing that. Somehow that brought that up for me in terms of the way you were holding that, to show you that. And there are many harmonic relationships in here that come up like that as you begin to work with it and look at it. You say, oh, this is connected to this. I didn't ever see that before. And that level of connected interface, it's astonishing. So you'll start seeing your own, and people have pointed things out to me about it that I didn't know. So it's a hologram, and consequently it's ever open to exploration of new ways of looking at that hologram. So does that feel complete with what we can do this day? Thank you for staying longer, because I feel like this was a lot to experience just today. Are there any other completions before we say for this moment adieu in this beautiful sisterhood?
Hello, Ariel.
Beloved?
Hello. Hi, do you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, perfect. Hello. This is a non-linear comment that comes up. I think, it was very powerful for me, the holographic perception. And I realized that I've been working with these geometries in flowers. I've been gardening these months in the Charles Well, and connecting with the flowers. I realized that I've been connecting with these geometries. It's very, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt it in my body. Now I'm working with, by synchronicities, I started working with the crop circles that I even didn't know that they exist. And I started to paint them and to dance them. Here I don't know, maybe there's no any logical connection, but I was painting one crop circle, and it reminds me maybe many geometries together, and I will show you. If
I can get my glasses on.
Sorry.
Uh-huh. That's what you drew from your experience?
Yeah, this is a crop circle that they appear in the landscape.
Oh, cool. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I don't know. In my body, in my womb, I was making the connection between these symbols of the archetypes and these crop circles.
Oh, wow.
And my experience embody them, like dancing them, or drawing them.
Yeah.
So this was came up.
These geometries that are on here are, that's one level. A crop circle is a very complex geometry that divine intelligence is communicating with us in that geometry. It's phenomenal what the crop circles hold in the way of information. For the planet, it's collective information base. Made by sound and light, made by vibration, it's phenomenal. How wonderful that you're there to experience it directly in England. Thank you for sharing. And you do experience it in your body, very much so. So are we complete now? I would just like to close by saying I am so grateful that you're here in this sisterhood, exploring with us so that we can be priestesses on the edge of chaos, truly serving in the name of love here on earth. And we're grateful you're part of the 13 Moon Sanctuary of the Open Heart. And we're grateful for those of you who are sustaining members that are helping us to make these programs possible for us to continue to serve and to learn together and to explore together consciousness. So I'm deeply grateful. Thank you for all of you taking your time and your blessing of your presence that added vibration to our circle this morning. Blessed be, and thank you, Amma, so much for manning the ship for us, the spaceship. Really grateful for your adroit handling of this technology. Thank you.
Absolutely. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Any completions, or is this it? Do we say blessed be?
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be to each one of you.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Until we meet
Blessed
again.
be.
Until
Blessed
we
be.
meet again in her. Until we meet again in her. Joy, joy, joy. Thank you for being. Toodaloo, Michaela. Toodaloo, Charlotte. Charlotte. Toodaloo, all of you. I'm so joyful.
Bye. Thank you.